Okay, so let's um let's do in Gemara Beitzah. We're up to what are we up to? We're up to 6a, Vav Amud Aleph. So we've been talking about these halachas. We're talking the whole time. The Mishnah talks about an egg that was laid on Yontiv and Shabbos and Yontiv, 2 days Yontiv. Now we're going to talk about what about a bird that was hatched on Yontif. Now, we have to remember there's Gemara 6a in Beitzah. What is the din? There's a din of muktzah. What does muktzah mean? Muktzah means things that were set aside that you weren't going to use them. The only things that you're allowed to use on Yontif and Shabbos, for that matter, is things that you had in mind that you're going to use them on Yontif. But if you didn't have in mind to use them on Yontif, so then that's considered muktzah. Muktzah means it was set aside not for Yontif because you didn't even know that it's going to be there for Yontif. So you're not allowed to use it. That's called muktzah. Muktzah basically means that it is designated for something else and not for Yontiv. Yontiv, this is muktzah because it's not been prepared for Yontiv. Now, a bird that was hatched on Yontiv. Now, what does a person want to do with the bird that was hatched on Yontiv? He wants to shecht it and he wants to eat it, right? He wants to eat the bird, a fresh bird, a young bird on Yontif. He wants to eat it. The problem is the bird was not available before Yontif, so you couldn't have had in mind to eat that bird. It wasn't even there. It was only hatched on Yontif. The question is, am I allowed to use that bird? Can I shecht it and use, you're allowed to shecht on Yontif because that's oichel nefesh, that's something for your consumption. So the issue is, but this bird that you had no idea that it's going to be hatching on Yontif, so you didn't have in mind that you're going to eat that bird on Yontif. And when Yontif came in, the bird wasn't around yet, and now it's hatched. Are you allowed to use that bird on Yontif? Zog the Gemara, Itmar, we learned in a memory. Efroyach shenoilad b'Yontif, a baby bird, an efroyach, a small chick or a small bird, shenoilad b'Yontif, that was hatched on Yontif. Rav says osur, it's prohibited. And we'll see in a minute. The Gemara is going to explain. Asur, we understand why it should be Asur. That's pretty easy to understand. That it's Asur because you didn't have it prepared from before Yontif, so you can't eat it on Yontif. Shmuel disagrees. The Itaima, other people say Rabbi Chaim disagrees. There's two versions. Who is the one that disagrees, whether it's Shmuel or it's Rabbi Chaim? But they say, either Shmuel or Rabbi Chaim, they say mutter. It's permissible. Why is it permissible? Well, let's wait for the Gemara in 1 minute. Rav Amar Osur, Rav says it's prohibited. Why? Muktzah. This is muktzah. It's been designated for, not going to be, it wasn't designated for Yontif. You didn't have in mind to eat it on Yontif. It's muktzah, and you're not allowed to use it. But Ushmul v'iteim Rabbi Yochanan Omar muter. They say that it's muter. Question is, why would it be mutter? So the Gemara gives an interesting reason over here. Why is it mutter? He says, Hoyil umatir atzmoi bishchita. Since he permits himself now by shechting. What happened over here once the bird was hatched? Now a bird that was hatched becomes permitted to be eaten through shechita. Up till the point where the bird was hatched, you couldn't shecht it. And you couldn't eat it. There was no permission. There was no heter to eat it with shechita. Why? Because it wasn't yet an independent bird by itself. It was still an egg before it was hatched. And it didn't need shechita. Now, all of a sudden, there is a new allowance over here. The allowance is you can shecht it now. So since there's an allowance for shechita, there's also allowance to eat it. Let's look at Rashi. Since he permits himself, the bird that has been hatched is permitted now, bilidosei, as he was hatched, liyos nishchat, you can shecht him. Masheloi hoyo lifnei lidosei, that which was not there before it was hatched, af muktzah hitir es atzma bilidosei. So muktzah also became permitted. One thing is permitted, the other one is dragged along with him. He became permitted now to be shechted. He's also permitted now to be eaten. The migui, the iskan laha, because we say, since it's been prepared now for shchita mutar, it's also mutar muktzah. There's a concept of migui, since it helps one thing now, it became permissible to be shechted, it also became permissible to be eaten. We take away the muktzah. The migu, the askin law. So basically, he is saying that that you're allowed to do it because since it's permitted for shechita now, it's also permitted for muktzah, and that's where you can eat it. So the Gemara asks the question, why would it even be muktzah over here? We know what happens. Forget about a chick that was hatched. Forget about a bird that was hatched. Let's talk about a calf that was born on Yom Tov. A calf that was born on Yom Tov, before it was hatched, you didn't have in mind to eat it. You didn't know there was a calf over there, correct? And then once it is born, once the calf is born, the halacha is you can eat it on Yom Tov. Everybody agrees you can eat it on Yom Tov. So how come by the egg that is hatched, there is a question? There are some opinions say that you could, but some opinions say that you can't. Amar Rei Rav Kana v'Rab Asi l'Rav. So Rav Kana Rav Asi said to Rav, who said that it is prohibited. Rav said that the egg that was hatched on Yom Tov is prohibited. So they asked him, to Rab. V'chi ma bein ze le'egel shenoled b'yom tov. What difference is there between this, that you're saying that it's prohibited, to a calf that was born on Yom Tov? You can go ahead and eat the calf. Rashi. Le'egel shenoled b'yom tov, a calf that was born on Yom Tov, the Tanya lekamon, we learned later on, shemutar b'yom l'divrei hakoil, that the calf is permissible to shecht it and to eat it that day. Everybody agrees that way. So how come you, Rav, are saying over here about the egg, that the egg that was hatched, the bird that was hatched on Yom Tov, you're saying that it's also, that it's muktzah? Amar Lahu. So Rav answered to Rav Kana and Rav Asi, he answered them, in the case of the calf that was born, he is already ready for eating because of his mother who was shechted, which means, let's say before Yom Tov, if you shechted the mother, you were allowed to be eating the cow, the calf as well. The halacha is a ben pekua, means a baby that's in the mother's stomach. If you shecht an animal, and then there's a baby in the stomach, the mother, you shecht the mother, and then when you open up the animal, you find a calf in there. That calf is permissible. You don't even need to shecht it. It became mutter through the shechita of its mother. So this calf, you can't say that it wasn't ready. It was ready from before Yom Tov. Why? If the mother would have been shechted, you would have eaten the calf as well. And therefore, the fact that it's now born doesn't make it muktzah, because this is still, it was ready in the mother's stomach. And now it came out, so it's still the same calf, could be eaten then, it can be eaten now. Let's see Rashi. Muchan agav imoy. It's prepared by way of its mother. So Rashi, be'oido betoich me'eho. It's prepared by the mother while it's still in the mother's womb. Im nishchato, if it was slaughtered, ha'eim hoyanecha. Im nishchato ha'eim hoyanecha, I'm sorry. If the mother had been shechted, then you could eat the calf as well. So therefore, there's nothing new that happened here with this calf. You could have eaten it before, you can eat it now. And the fact that it wasn't out of the stomach, it doesn't make a difference. You could have still eaten it, so it's considered prepared. The mother was prepared, and the baby is prepared, because if you shechted the mother, you could eat the baby. So the Gemara asks, the din is that the same thing is a baby that is being, a calf that is being carried by a mother, which is a treifa. A treifa means, it's a kosher, we usually say a non-kosher animal is called a treifa, but no. A treifa really means a kosher animal that cannot live, it becomes treifa, which means it was by a lion or something happened to it that it can't live for a year. It means it was damaged. That's called a treifa. And that's why it's not kosher. What would be the din? What would be the din with the calf that was carried by a mother, which was a treifa. Then, if you shechted uh, uh, you can't eat. Then you can't eat the baby that is in the mother's in the animal's womb, which is a treifa, cannot be eaten because the only reason why you can eat the calf is because the shechita of the mother also applies to the calf. So when you shechted the mother, you fulfill the obligation of shechita for the calf as well, because the calf is considered a part of the mother. But that only applies if the mother is a kosher, is not a treifa. So then the shechita helps for the mother. But if the mother is a treifa, so then your shechita doesn't do anything because of shechita. We can't shech the treifa; it's not kosher. So the Gemara says, but it's still the halacha is the baby of a treifa. Once it's born, it's kosher to shecht it as a born animal. It's kosher to shecht. Why? Because there's nothing wrong with this baby. The mother may be a treifa, but the baby is a normal baby. It's going to live. There's nothing wrong with her. So therefore, the baby you can shecht, but you can't say that if you find the baby, the calf in the mother's womb, that you're going to eat it, because then you want to allow it through the shechita of the mother. If you're going to shech the calf itself, the baby of a treifa, that's okay. But you can't say that this baby has been prepared even before he was born because of the mother. No, not in the case if the mother is a treifa, because over there the mother's shechita would not permit this calf to be eaten. The only reason that you are allowed to eat it today is because you're going to shech the calf itself. So we can't say this svara that it is permissible, that it was permitted through the mother. And still there's no dissent. Everybody agrees that if a calf was born from an animal of treifa on Yom Tov, it's okay. So how come you're prohibiting the chicken that was hatched from the egg on Yom Tov? Why are you answering it? Let's look inside Rashi. What is the legals from the hatreifa? Rashi says treifa bo bno osur im nimtzo betoicha. If you find a calf inside the mother, and the mother is not kosher, bno osur, the son, the baby, the calf is prohibited. Im nimtzo betoicha, if you find it inside the mother's womb when you shechted the mother. Why? The ubar yerech imayu, because the fetus is considered like a part of the mother, like the thigh of the mother. It's part of the mother. And since you want to permit the eating of this calf through the shechita of the mother, you can't do that. You're coming to eat it because you shechted the mother. But the mother could not be shechted because the mother is a treifa. And as long as this calf was in the mother's womb, it's a treifa just like the mother. So, if you find a calf in a mother a treifa, you can't eat that. You can't eat that calf because it's treif, like the mother. And you can't shech the mother. So the mother's shechting did not apply to the calf who is a part of his mother. If it doesn't help for the mother, it doesn't help for the baby either. But what happens? Oh, but once it's born, and you're not using the mother's shechita to allow it, you're going to shech the animal itself. So when it was born on Yontif from the Treifa, Lekal Lemeimer, so you can't say Hoyu Lumuchan Agav Imoy, that since he is prepared by his mother. In other words, that you could have eaten him. Why you couldn't have eaten him? Because the son of a treifa, the calf of a treifa, cannot be eaten. So therefore, and still, and yet, when you shechted by himself, muter l'shochtoi v'la'achloi, you are permitted to shecht it and to eat it. The loy ashkechon man the osir, we don't find anybody prohibiting. So you have a calf of an animal which is a treifa. It was born on Yontif. You can go ahead and eat it. Even though you don't have the argument, oh, it was prepared because it was prepared by the mother. No, in this case, it wasn't prepared by the mother because since the mother's a treifa, and still everybody allows it. So why won't they allow the chick that was hatched or the bird that was hatched on Yontif? And the Gemara says Shosik Rab. So Rab was silent. He didn't know. He didn't know what to answer. Shosik Rab. The Rab was silent. He didn't have an answer. He didn't know also why is it different. How come it's mutter there and Sosir? Amar Rava said Rava the Itayim Rabbi Yosef. Other people say Rabbi Yosef said it. My time is Shosik Rab. Why was he silent? He has a good answer. He can make a good distinction why the calf could be eaten and the bird cannot be eaten. Lema lahu, he should say to them, the reason why, because you're not allowed to eat it, because it's a treifa, but a treifa can be used. So this calf is not muktzah. Why? Because if you shechted the mother, even though the mother is a treifa and you found it, yes, the baby is a treifa too, but you can give it to the dogs to eat. So it's prepared. And once it's prepared for the dogs, it's prepared for the people too. L'klovim. So Rashi says the bein hashmoshes hoiso imay emedes lekach. During twilight, as the Yom Tov approached, the mother was standing to be eaten by the dogs because treifa is eaten by the dogs. So therefore, it's prepared. But it can only be prepared for the dogs. If it's meat, you're going to give it to the dogs. But a bird which is still in the shell before it's hatched, you can't say you're going to feed it to the dogs. It is not destined to be eaten by the dogs. And it wasn't even fit to be eaten by the dogs. So it comes out that before Yom Tov, it wasn't fit to be eaten at all, not the dogs, not the humans. Hilkach Noiladu, that's why we consider this Noilad, it was born. And therefore, it is it's not allowed. No, you want to tell him I'm in the middle of a shir. Mendy's calling. Omar le Abaye says to him Abaye. Okay, so he actually Rava answers. He says, you have a good answer. There's a big difference. By the calf, it's fit to be eaten. By whom? By the dogs. So therefore, there was never a time that you can't eat that calf. So therefore, when it was born on Yom Tov, okay, it's not something new. It was always fit. as opposed to the egg before the chicken was hatched, the bird was hatched, couldn't eat it because with the shell, it's not fitting to be eaten to the dogs. And that's why that's considered no. I'm not getting so well the argument here. I got to look it up. But okay, let's say it's not fit to be eaten with a shell. Why can't you peel the shell? What do we need? Uh, I mean, when you're eating the bird, you're not eating the shell. You're eating the inside of the, right? I'm assuming that the bird is hatched from the inside of the shell, correct? So when we say that it wasn't ready, I mean, the peel wasn't ready then and it's not ready now either. The shell is not eaten at all, right? What happens after the 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 bird is hatched? The shell stays on the side, and the bird comes out. So therefore, the Gemara's argument seems to be, but the shell, as is, the egg, is not fit to be eaten. As is, because you can't eat it. Dogs can't eat it with the shell. So that makes it not prepared. Okay, I have to look it up, but anyways, that's what he makes the distinction. So you're not allowed to, Rav will say that you're not allowed to eat the bird that has been hatched. And they're explaining him, the rabbis are explaining the verse of Rav, but by the birds, because you can't eat the egg before it was hatched, the bird. So therefore the bird is not considered to be prepared because you could not eat it before, and that's why it's muktzah on Yom Tov. That's the opinion of Rav. Omar le Abaye, so Abaye says to him, we'll turn the page. Hashto muchan la'odom loy habi muchan l'klov. Your argument now is that the reason why the calf is permitted to be eaten on Yom Tov because the calf was fit to be eaten before. Even the calf of a treifa was fit to be eaten before because you can feed it to the dogs. So the Gemara is wondering, is asking, Abaye is challenging and is saying, how could you allow the person eating it and saying it's not muktzah because the dogs can eat it? He says, we don't say that if something is prepared for a person, we don't consider it prepared for the dogs. How could we say that if it was prepared for dogs, it should be considered prepared for the person? Doesn't really fit. This is what he's arguing. So he says like this. Now that we say that even if it was prepared for person's consumption, we don't consider that to be prepared for dogs, and you will not allow to serve it for the dogs, although it was prepared for people. And we'll see the Mishnah, the proof of that. What's the case? Muchan la'odom Rashi. Muchan la'odom la'havim muchan l'klov. Lamandi isle muktzah. We're talking about according to the person that goes by muktzah. The fact that it was prepared for a person does not make it prepared for klov. The case that happened over here was there was an animal that died on Shabbos. So what means is now it became a nevela on Shabbos. So, according to Rabbi Yehuda, yesterday, Rabbi Yehuda, Esmal bein hashmoshes hoyso emedes la'adam. It was fit for people's consumption because the behemoth didn't die yet, right? It was, I mean, you can't shecht it on Shabbos, but a living animal it was not prepared. You don't give it for the dogs. What do you use? What do you use the animals? You use it to shecht it to feed people. So before it became nevela, before it died on Shabbos, right? As the Shabbos was entering, it was standing there for human consumption, which means the person is going to take that animal and shecht it, and the person is going to eat it. And now that it's dead, but the fact that now it's muktzah because it's not meant to be given to the dogs. So now, since it became nevela, all of a sudden people don't eat it anymore. Who's going to eat it? The dogs are going to eat it. So you're saying it's still considered muktzah for dogs. Yeah. So did not. So let's do that. So muchan la'adam, even though it was prepared for a person, it's not considered prepared for dogs. In other words, it's still going to be muktzah for the dogs.
It's
It's not.
at two different times. One is
No. What do you mean?
it's good for people on Friday, but Shabbos it's treif. It wouldn't be good for people.
Oh, well, good. The muktzah, that's why you'll see Rashi says bein hashmoshes. Muktzah is defined by bein hashmoshes. This animal at twilight, once something was not muktzah by twilight, it doesn't become muktzah after that. So since the bein hashmoshes, it wasn't dead yet, it wasn't an avail yet, that means that it's still standing for human consumption. That doesn't change on Shabbos. But yet you're saying, but an animal can't eat it.
Wait, so you're saying that an animal that dies on Shabbos is not muktzah on Shabbos once it's dead?
Not even for the animal to eat it.
Hmm?
Let's talk what the Mishnah said. The Mishnah is going to say, "Mechatchin es hadluyin lifnei habehema." Okay, yeah, you're responsible to feed the animal, so you can cut the squash, cut it up so the animal can eat it. V'esanevela lifnei haklovim, and you can cut up the carcass before the dogs. Okay, he's talking about a carcass that became on Shabbos because he doesn't go by muktzah. But Rabbi Yehuda holds from muktzah, so he says like this: Im loy hoysa nevelam erev Shabbos, if it wasn't dead from before Shabbos, so that means that you did not have in mind to feed it to the animals on Shabbos because it was alive, it wasn't nevela yet. Asura, then it is prohibited. Then you're not allowed to feed that animal that for Shabbos. Why? Because it's not prepared. Because you weren't going to feed it to the animals. It wasn't. But even though it was prepared for people, and like I said, it's enough bein hashmoshes, even though it was standing for human consumption, not for that Shabbos, but the animal was there to be used for humans, right? it's not to use for human on Shabbos, but it was prepared generally for humans. And you're saying it's not prepared for dogs, and you can't feed the dogs. So, muchan leklovim have a muchan la'odom. So, are you then going to say, if it is prepared for the dogs only, which means from before Shabbos, you're saying it's a treifa, you could have feedden it to the dogs. And therefore, when the baby calf was born from the animal on Shabbos, you can go ahead and eat you can go ahead and shechter and yontif. You go shechter and yontif. Why? Because you could have used it, not eaten it, but you could have used it from Shabbos, from Friday. You could have used it. But so he says it doesn't really make sense to allow you to eat the calf that was born from the treifa on Shabbos, because before Shabbos it could have been eaten by the dogs and it was prepared. Because if you say prepared for human doesn't prepare you for the animals, how could prepare for the animals, the treifa, would be prepared for humans? Amalei says not a question, Ian, that's true. Muchan la'adam loy havi muchan l'klov. If it's prepared for human consumption, then it's not prepared for dogs, which means a living animal from before Shabbos is not prepared for a dog because it's not there to feed the dogs. It's there only for the person to eat. The maid the chazilei inish leishadilei leklovim. That which is fit for human consumption, you don't throw it out into the dogs. So therefore, if it's for human, like in the case, it came in a veil on Shabbos, but on Friday it was Ben Hashmoshes, it was alive. That's meant for the people. It's not meant for dogs. But on the other hand, muchan leklovim have a muchan la'adam. If it's prepared by the klovim, even though it's a treifa, and it would be treifa, you'd have to give it to the dogs. It's still muchan la'adam. The daita the inish akol nida chazilei, because the person has in mind anything that is fit for him, he's going to consume it, and therefore it's prepared. The uber shebimei treifa, and the fetus which is in the stomach of the treifa, roiloi likshe yevolid, is fit to him when it's born. Hilkach me'etmel daito ilave. So therefore, already from the day before, his mind is on that fetus. Im yevolid yechlanik, he'll be birthed, he's going to eat it. So it's always been prepared, because he says the dog will eat it if it's born before from the treifa. Okay, then the dogs will eat it. If they won't, then later on, if it's be born on Yom Tov, then we will eat it. So therefore, it's not muktzah. So the Gemara Tanya Kavosi de Rav, we learned in one brayse like Rav that it's asur, and Tanya Kavosi de Shmuel, we learned like a brayse like Shmuel with Rabbi Yochanan that it is mutter. Tanya Kavosi de Rav, which is the brayse which says like Rav, Egel Shenela B'Yontav mutter, a calf that was born on Yontav is permissible. Afroyach Shenela B'Yontav asur, but a bird that was hatched on Yontav is asur, like Rav says. And it says, so what's the difference between that the egel is asur, the egel is mutter and the frech is mutter? The egel is prepared through his mother through shchita. This is not prepared by his mother. And here we're talking, of course, by a kosher one, but the same thing the Gemara said also by a non-kosher, because it's chazal treifa. But here we're talking about that it is going to be Tanya Kavasi de Shmuel. Learned like Shmuel that says that it's also B'Tei Rabbi Yochanan, that it's also Egel Shenelad B'Yomtiv Mutter. The Egel is Mutter, and also a Froyach Shenelad B'Yomtiv Mutter is also Mutter. My time, the reason he gives, why is it permissible? It's not prepared. He says Muchan Agav Imoy. The Egel is prepared by his mother, like we said before. Since there's the heter now, there's the very first reason we wrote down that he permits himself through the shechita, he becomes mutter to be eaten. Now he shechtim, drags along migui, also that he will allow him to eat it on Yom Tov. Okay, let's learn another brayse. Talmud Rabbana, we learned in a brayse. Efroyach shenoilad b'yontiv osur. He says the Efroyach that was born on Yontiv is osur, which is like Shmuel and the other, the Rabbi Yochanan. They say that it's osur. Rabbi Lezer and Yaakov Oimer, Yaakov says, Av b'choil osur, that a newly born bird is prohibited even on a weekday. Lefi sheloin nifspatchu einov, because his wife eyes have not yet been developed. Sheloin nispatchu einov, it's not developed yet. His eyes haven't been open. Then he's still considered to be an insect, and you can't eat him. The srabe leisura, that was included to isur mikol hasheretz aloretz come on. It says all the creepy crawling that climb on the ground, like we will say later on, that's part would also include this bird that has not yet developed the sea. The Gemara says, Kiman Oslo, oh the Tanya, who does it follow? The fact we learned in Abraisa that from the posik that says, B'chol hasheretz ala oretz, the rabbis afroichim shalenis patchu eineim, that this is including the small birds that have not yet opened their eyes or not yet developed their eyes. Command, the says, that's exactly the din of Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. Okay, let's leave it over here, and we'll mamshich and Mitzvah next week. The time to be scheduled again. Everybody enjoy the rest of your evening, the rest of the week, and we'll see you next week, Bezrat Hashem. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, that way they make it so easy for you.